Well, here's the sleep shop's answer. Well, here's the sleep shop's answer.
Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to another edition of VFX Live Houdini Special. My name's Daniel Hourigan and I'm the head of effects here at CG Spectrum. This week we're going to be continuing on with our Kit Bash pirate ship destruction, and yeah, we'll just see where we get to by the end of the stream. You might notice I've got some music going this week. Seems like it's working, so let me know if there's any audio issues this week. Hopefully things have been ironed out. But I'm going to dive straight in here, and I've been playing around a little bit with this over the, just after the stream really, to see what I could get going. And you'll notice I've got an interesting kind of motion going on here. So yeah, let me just bring up my chat. Hey guys, hey Nadia, hey Rizwan, hey Marcus, how's it going? Just gonna got like an annoying feedback thing going on here. Let me just turn my monitor off. There we go. How is everybody going? I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to check that out yet, Rizwan, but I will. You sent me the land speeder animation. I had a quick look, but I haven't had a good chance to really dive into it yet. How's everybody going? So yeah, basically what I've been playing around with here, just this morning actually, you might remember if you joined last week, I was struggling with trying to remember how to do this kind of, I was trying to get some like force going on. Hey Ivan, how's it going? Hey Alan, thanks for joining us. You might remember last week I was trying to get, I think it was this one here, this stuff going on. Maybe it was this one. And yeah, I just sort of, I failed dismally. And then I was thinking about it and I realized that what I was trying to do only really works if it's just a single solid ship. So it doesn't really work when it's a complete destruction. It's sort of, it will pull the ship apart if you try to do it, because it's based on distance from the center, and what that means is that it's going to kind of different parts are going to get pulled in different directions depending on how far away they are from the center. So this morning I had a bit of a think about it and just thought maybe what I should do is just do an overall force. So what I ended up doing, we already had this kind of force in there. When it was greater than y, it pulls the boat down, but then I didn't have anything happening below that. But what I've added this morning is just adding an extra one in, saying if it's less than 0, do positive gravity. And what you end up with is this kind of cool bobbing motion. And the masts are kind of, well, this one is falling off, but it looks pretty cool. And, it is going to roll over, which is a little unfortunate. But I have already solved this problem. So I'm going to bring up something here in play. Let's see if I can find it. Because I love playing around with these boats in flip sims and RBDs. It's a lot of fun. So let me see if I can find this previous project that I did. I may have shown you guys this, so you might have seen it You might have seen it once before. Let's have a look. So this is a simulation that I did. I don't know if this is the final one, but this is one of them. This is a simulation I did where, you know, it's flip sim basically. The boat is an RBD, and there's vellum sails, which were done after the simulation. But the boat and the water are being simulated together at the same time. And as you can see, the boat doesn't flip over. It did when you just run it without any fancy stuff. It completely just, you know, it's a washing machine, so it just kind of gets turned around. But to keep the boat upright, I tried all sorts of crazy Vex stuff, and you know, yeah, just couldn't get it working. Basically, tried all sorts of things and abandoned them. And then I came up with the idea of having a look at constraint, essentially, so the boat is kind of looking at a point in space. So if you imagine, you know, that the boat was on a pendulum or something, or tied to a string to a point in space, if you had a point up here that the boat was tied to, it would not be able to turn. It would not be able to rotate on its side because it's kind of constrained. It would be allowed to sort of move side to side and back to forth, but it wouldn't really be able to pitch and yaw. I don't know. I think that's the term, or roll. You know. So let's give that a go and see if we can get the motion going. And I mean, it is still completely just all lots of different parts. So we'll, if anything, you know, if I turn the Kraken back on, it will break apart as well as do this motion. So yeah, you know, it should be kind of cool, like cool combination of two things going on. We might need to delay the animation, but let's just play this and make sure that it's still breaking apart. Can I put the Tasmanian Devil on the ship? That's a good idea. Is there a cartoon where the Tasmanian Devil goes on the ship, or are you just saying that because I'm Australian? I find the Tasmanian Devil, I used to like it when I was a kid, but it's weird, you know, knowing what Tasmanian Devils actually are like. They're not particularly similar. I guess they sound kind of similar to the Tasmanian Devil from Looney Tunes, but they don't spin. I don't know where that came from. So there we go. You can see it's still kind of it's still being destroyed as well, which is cool. So let's turn this off for now, and let's try this look at. So I'm going to ditch all this other junk that wasn't working. We've got a pop drag in there. Let's do a pop look at. And as I've said in the past, you know, this is the cool thing about RBDs is that the look at, or the pop tools, you know, you can use them all because it's all just points that you're solving when you're dealing with the bullet. You can use all of the look at, or the pop tools. So you've got a couple of options with the pop look at, but basically I'm just going to set a target somewhere in space, and I think you can actually see it in the viewport. It may be slightly hidden, perhaps. I don't know. Sometimes I thought you could see it, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just making that up. Let's hide this. See if we can see any points there. Doesn't look like it. No. Alright, so anyway, let's just choose a point in space. We can sort of figure it out if we go to side view. You know, maybe even like 50 or 25, 35. We could try one of those first. Maybe let's try 25 and see what that looks like. Might have come from tornadoes. Yeah, I know. It's just I mean, we don't really have tornadoes here either. It's certainly not in Tasmania where the Tassie Devils come from. Maybe it's just because they're kind of fast and jumpy or something. Maybe they do spin. I don't know. Reference direction. I kind of think that the reference direction should be up, but I could be wrong. I'm going to leave that as default and just see. I guess it does have an up vector here, so perhaps we just leave that as Z. It is actually oriented down the x-axis, this ship, so we may need to change that. But let's just run it and see what happens. What we're trying to avoid is the... Whoa, look at that! That's cool. Okay. Well. That's crazy. What's going on there? I guess my reference direction might be a bit off. I know it depends, but how many months do you think it takes to learn Houdini? Well, yeah, it does depend. Look, I think it depends to what level you want to learn it, and how much, how much stuff you want to learn, I guess. I think you can become kind of, at least a little bit proficient within maybe 6 to 9 months, maybe a year. But it takes a lot longer than that to really master it. It also depends how much, you put into it. If you dedicate yourself to learning something like it is a job, then, you're putting in maybe 8 hours a day or something, and you could learn it a lot faster. But if you're only kind of learning it a couple of hours a day, then, it's going to take longer. I think, for me, it's just really important to... I think this is the issue here, this immediate turn. I think I need to set it to turn or spin. I'm going to try turn. Let's see. See, the whole thing's falling apart. So maybe even this might not work, because it is all separate pieces, perhaps. Perhaps this solution doesn't work, but let's try spin. So, yeah, for me, I think it's really important just to learn the fundamental ideas first. And the sooner you focus on that stuff, the better off you'll be in the long term. Probably the faster you'll be able to pick things up as well. If you can master the fundamental concepts like attributes, how to control them, how to transfer them, how to do various things with them, learning some of the fundamental ways that you can set up effects to take place and things to kind of work using attribute transfer and, all the crazy things that you see me do. Vex, don't have to go crazy with the Vex, especially if you're not so inclined. It will come in time. But, yeah, look, I think it does have a lot of potential, you're right. And it's certainly worth learning for lots of industries, not just visual effects, but it is an incredibly powerful software, and you can do, a lot with it. So I think it is certainly worthwhile learning. But yeah, look, it does take a long time. I'm sure I've mentioned this in the past as well, but I spent, when I first went to London, I'd been working in the industry for a number of years, maybe 5-6 years, and I had to learn Houdini to get a job when I moved to London, because nobody really used 3ds Max, which is what I was used to using. And I spent basically 6 months just working every single day at it, like a job. I had nothing else to do apart from explore London. And, even then, by the end of that intense 6-month period, I was still pretty green. There was a lot. I didn't understand those fundamentals, which is why I always say it, because that really slowed me down in my progress. Hey, Urko, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. So yeah, I think trying to master those fundamental ideas and the core concepts, then no matter what you end up doing in Houdini, it will transfer, and it does become kind of, just much easier to go, well, I can do this, I can do that. It doesn't really matter. It's all the same, whether you're setting up RBDs or Flip or Pyro. You learn the specifics that you need, but the process is the same no matter what. So it kind of, it gives you just greater kind of confidence and greater power to do whatever you want to do. That's, I saw someone on the Houdini Facebook group the other day just saying something about, Houdini is only limited by your knowledge, essentially. So it's just, what you can do is only down to how much you know about Houdini. And you always hit walls. Everyone hits walls, and there's just problems that you have to solve. But the more you know, the faster you can kind of overcome those things. Lucky you have 8 hours a day to study Houdini. Can be a plan next year. Yeah, I mean that's great. You will be able to learn it if you dedicate a lot of time to it. But also, you know, focus on particular areas first and try not to spread yourself too thinly across the entire package. You know, it's important to focus on areas one at a time maybe and move through. Start with particles. You know, if you're into visual effects, start with particles and go from there. Don't dive headfirst into pyro or destruction, because particles are a lot easier to kind of get into, and it does teach you some fundamental ideas. And as you can see, I'm using particle tools to do this stuff, so it makes sense to, you know, start there. 2 sims to render this week. Is that for your flip project, Urko? I'm looking forward to seeing that. Alright, so I just upped the torque scale of the so I set the method to spin, and it seems to be not breaking apart now, which is good. And I set the torque scale to 10. We've got to let it run a little more to see if it'll tip over. I mean, I think someone mentioned last week that it would be interesting to drive the boat via like a point on the ocean surface or something, and that still I think is a good idea. I thought this might be interesting though, like it's kind of a oh, the chandelier, cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that one too. Okay, that's very cool RBD sim. Yeah, I thought it might be interesting to see like this motion, which is different to the ocean, as like, you know, then if you do a full ocean sim, then because the boat is sort of changing differently to the ocean surface, you might get these interesting wave crashes and other stuff going on. All right, so it's still rolling over. I might need to up the torque scale a little more to get this to be stable. 30. I wonder if the direction is, you know, is the kind of thing that is throwing this off a little bit as well. I sort of wondered about this reference direction. Perhaps if I set that to 1, which is, you know, up, then there's this mode, target is direction, and that might, instead of targeting it to a point, that might actually help it rotate to a particular direction, so it's oriented upwards. Let's see what happens with that. It's a bit of a slow sim, unfortunately. Everyone gets focused on something. I'm focusing on environments, but not big ones. If it was the case, I was already learning Houdini. I mean, environment creation and, you know, world building is something that's really cool in Houdini, and it's an incredibly powerful tool for that, especially with the USD and Solaris developments that have come out in 19. I haven't really played around with that stuff. I don't have much cause to within my role as an effects artist, but you know, it looks incredibly powerful, and certainly USD is the way forward for that type of stuff. Let's see what happens. It's not tipping over yet, but I think it didn't seem to until halfway through. Environment with speed tree and quixel textures. Yeah, I think speed tree is great. We, you know, at Method we use speed tree a lot, and all the trees in Jumanji, and a lot of stuff comes out of speed tree. It's just the quality of it is quite good, and you can then bring speed tree assets into Houdini. I mean, you can do wind and simulations inside of speed tree, but they can look a bit kind of yeah, I don't know. For subtle stuff, it's fine, but anything bigger, you need maybe to rig the tree. But there's a shot in the first Jumanji remake where a helicopter crashes through palm trees as it's kind of crashing into a ravine, and I set up like a little rig for that from speed tree assets, and then just built a rig to do some deformation, and maybe like a vellum sim or something. I can't remember. I don't even think vellum was out then. It might have been FEM, but some sort of cloth sim off that. So you can do a lot with speed tree assets once you bring them in as well. I think you may even be able to output a skeleton, which might be useful for you know, for doing rigging. Well, this doesn't seem to be working too well. Target 25, reference direction 1, target is direction, treat as wind. Maybe I should try treat as wind. You can see when I did that, it actually starts to rotate upwards again. Oh, look at that. The whole thing's probably going to flip over and break apart. Nice. Well, that looks cool, but it's not what it's not what I want. I will run this one more time to see if it works. You may have just freaked out because I did it halfway through the sim. When you say designer, do you mean touch designer, or is it substance or something? Substance painter, I assume you mean. But what is designer? I'm not familiar with that. The touch designer is the only one that I can think of. But that's more for interactive stuff, right? Alright, I'll run this one more time and see if it works. It's not breaking apart now, which is good. Well, let's see if it stays more upright. So when you turn on treat as wind, essentially it just adds a drag to the force. So it will, you know, it doesn't, it's not so aggressive. Oh, substance designer. Oh, I see. I'm not sure I know what the difference is between substance designer and painter. Different world. Alright, well, so far, doesn't look like it's flipping over. Maybe it worked. You could maybe drive this bobbing via a sine wave as well, or something, you know, some other method. I'm just doing it based on a condition. You know, when the ship is high in the water, it's going to be pushed down. When the ship is low, it's going to be pushed up. And you're going to get some, like, it's all the nodes. Oh, sorry, substance designer and substance painter. It's all the nodes in substance designer, right? I'll have to look it up. So you get some interesting torque and torsion in the boat as well. And if we had a really floppy kind of connection, then, you know, we would see some twisting. You can already see kind of the masts bouncing around a little bit, and the ship overall might be sort of flexing. But that's cool. It looks like setting that to treat as wind has stopped that from tipping over completely. So, you know, it's an interesting kind of thing to play with. I'm going to get this in here, but I'm going to go and just, yeah, here's my kind of lame tentacle. I did actually change the motion a little bit. I added a bit more of a curl so it sort of really pulls tight. But I'm going to give it a bit more of an offset. Is that what I want to do? No, I want to go the other way. I want it to kick in a bit later. If I do minus, it will kind of offset it right back. There we go, right to the end. Let's see what that looks like. Procedural textures and painter is for taking textures. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Gotcha. I think Houdini is interesting for creating procedural textures as well. I mean, it's probably not quite the same or as good as doing it in Substance, but yeah, you can do some really interesting material stuff, especially procedural stuff. In Houdini, you can do it kind of straight in the material context. You can do it in SOPs as well, but then it's geometry dependent. You can do it in the material context, just mix materials and create procedural patterns in there. But you can also do it in the image context, which is an often, you know, ignored part of Houdini. You can see this composite view tab. So you can utilize that and create procedural textures inside of there. It's a completely 2D environment. So yeah, you know, there there's lots of things, lots of avenues you can do. I basically, yeah, just use Houdini for everything. Even if I do need to create a procedural texture, I'll just do it in Houdini. Usually just directly in the material context. But that also means that you have to kind of render it to see the result. Whereas if you do it in the composite view or the image context, you can see it. It's got a viewport. You know, you can display that procedural texture and then output it to the material. All right, let's see what happens with this big slam. The timing of it might be a bit off with the boat kind of being down in the water, but let's see. It's going to rise up a little bit. Yeah, I'll have to take a look. I hear people talking about substance all the time. But again, it's just not something that I need to do very often. And I'm in the habit of, if I do need a texture, I will often, hand paint something or put something into Critter or GIMP. I don't know Photoshop, but to just do it the good old-fashioned way that I'm used to. Okay. Look at this. That's kind of cool. I don't know why, but this mast just does not seem to want to... Like, it's going for a ride the whole time with this, but then as soon as this happens, it just kind of detaches. I feel like I need to improve the constraint on those masts. I guess it's just kind of lifted up and is getting sort of thrown free of the Kraken. Let's jump out and have a look at what that looks like with the water, because I've got this, I put this ocean surface in there, and you can see it kind of bobbing up and down, and it might be a little bit bobbing up a little bit high. Height fields make really nice height maps for designer. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, look, I think, you just find ways that softwares can work together, and I'm sure there's some really cool things in Substance that you could do, and like you say, leveraging cool things in Houdini and using that, bringing them in. And I mean, that's how I kind of started using Houdini. It was just, I would use Houdini for getting something cool out and then taking it back to 3D Studio Max. For the longest time, that's what I was doing. That's how I kind of got into it first. Just sort of used it to do flip sims, basically, because it was much faster than RealFlow. And yeah, and then I just learnt it little bit by little bit. All right, so yeah, I think what we need to do is adjust. I mean, I could, if I was feeling particularly lazy, I could just rise up the ocean surface so that the boat kind of sat a little better. Or I could even drop down the original position of the boat, and that might be a better way to go. Let's go down here and just on here. Oh, I don't want to do it. It's dangerous putting a transform in because I've got all these constraints and everything set up. Perhaps just here. And I'll drop it down a little bit in the water. It's weird, these cannons are very low on the boat. Maybe that's kind of the... Don't want it to go too far down. Maybe something like that. Designer is great for tweaking. Yeah, right. Cool. I like, I like the simplicity of just using one package these days. I used to have everything and just jump between them and do little bits and pieces in every package. But these days, I just kind of, I just like staying in one nice little controlled environment. Because getting stuff between packages is often annoying. Maybe not with images, but yeah, used to have 3ds Max and Maya and Houdini, and jumping between them was just a real headache. So I also have one thing that's controlling the height of this is going to be kind of you know, these levels that I sort of just decided on. So greater than 1, it's going to push down, and less than 0. But maybe I should just do greater than 0 and less than 0, and that might equalize it a little more around world 0. I don't know. Have to kind of try it. Swiss Army knife. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you gotta suck it up and put the time in, and just, you know, struggle through it for a little bit, like everyone does. But once you kind of get there, it's yeah, it's, you know, it's really enjoyable. Hey, Amine, maybe. Hi, how you going? Thanks for joining me. Let's see what this looks like. It might be sitting a bit low now, but you know, I'll stop messing with it. It's interesting to do this sort of stuff, though. You know, where you can create these conditional forces just to get something to bob around or to stay in a particular place. The other thing that I did with this boat is I found when I was running the simulation a lot, it would just end up getting pushed to the side and get stuck. Basically there's a sphere here as a collider, and it would just get completely pushed to the side. But what you'll notice is that it stays sort of very central to everything. And I've got this force, which is essentially just, if it gets too far away from the center, a force gets stronger and stronger. So right in the center there's basically no force, but as it gets closer and closer to the edge, the distance is greater, and that in that vex that I was kind of messing with last week, that's kind of what I was attempting. As the distance gets greater away from the center, the pull back towards the center gets stronger. So it kind of keeps the boat in the center of this sphere with a little bit of, you know, ability to move around depending on how much it gets pushed by the flip seam. But it sort of basically keeps it perfectly in the center the whole time. And then that pop look at allows it to rotate a little bit, but you can see it's just always staying very upright. And I think, you know, it probably could ease that off a little bit so it could tip a little more. But I found it was quite fiddly. You know, if I didn't have it enough, it would just flip over and get completely messed up. But yeah, that other force is an interesting one as well, where you just basically pick a point in space and just measure the distance from it. And then the further it is away from that, you create a vector back to it by subtracting the position of the boat from the centroid or the point in space, and that gives you a vector to it, and then you apply that as a force in that direction. It actually wasn't too bad, Mike. This was rendered in Redshift, and I think it only took a couple of hours, you know? I mean, it's not super crisp. There's a little bit of noise. But yeah, it was actually pretty quick. I was trying to render it. I had set the whole thing up in Mantra. If I go back and have a look. I don't know if I actually did do a Mantra render of this. As you can see, it's all Redshift. I don't know if these ones were. No, I think these are all just. Redshift ones. Oh, here's some interesting ones where I took different cameras, but hey, thanks, Mike. Yeah, look, it really wasn't that bad. I was very surprised. I think this was one of the first things I tried when I got Redshift, and I was blown away by how much faster it was. Which it isn't always the case on my machine. My graphics card is only a 2070. Oh, look at this, 2070 Super. So it's not like top notch or anything, but it was still pretty good. Well, there's some interesting things happening here. I think perhaps at the moment of destruction, I may want to disable that pop look at, because I reckon that is probably causing some really weird things to happen. So, you know, perhaps around frame 170, I should just turn this off. Let's do $F. $F less than 170. We'll set that activation to be on, and then on frame 170 will be off. And then I'm going to pick the sim up from that point, and hopefully it'll just get destroyed and won't look crazy. There you go, you can see. I think because once it starts getting destroyed, it's starting to rotate and twist, and then the pop lookout is just, it's freaking out trying to keep that stuff upright. And yeah, so we really need to kind of to kill that. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it, you know, that force, keeping it always in the center was, yeah, something that I had to kind of solve, because it just, the motion of the waves just kept pushing that boat against the side of the sphere, the invisible sphere, and it didn't look particularly good. So, all right, so that's a good thing to turn on. I mean, we could also at that point just set the force to be negative 9.8 as well, so that it stops doing the bobbing. I don't know, maybe we'll leave that on. Now, I think after looking at how this breaks, I think that it needs more fractures in parts. So let's have a look. This is the keel. Let's take a look at this one. So keel, or you know, the main beams. These I think are maybe a little bit big, some of these ones. So let's go just give that more points. With the points from volume as well, so you know, we've done this squash thing. With the points from volume, what you'll see is that sometimes it can be a little sparse along the edges of the surface. And what you can do is dither the surface, and basically that just creates like a feather out, and you can see how that puts points through and outside the surface as well, and that can sometimes help just on that level of the surface to add more fractures. So I've just given this an extra, well, I removed the 0.05 and made it 0.1 instead, and that might give us slightly larger or slightly smaller pieces. Let's see. Oh, it's tough. Let me turn this off. Oh, well, there we go. I mean, that's definitely broken that up into much smaller chunks. Okay, let's go and have a look at the other bits. So we got this stuff. So exploded view is a good way just to preview, you know, so it can be a bit hard sometimes. I mean, you can turn on the name visualizer that you get. You make sure your visualizers are on. And I can see when I do that like some of these pieces aren't actually getting fractured. There are a lot that are, but like this one here, for instance, isn't. We're using the same technique, so let's turn on the dither, and we should see, you see how that just, it does make sure that some of those pieces get broken. There's one there that isn't, but it's probably in a spot which doesn't matter too much. It's more the center that I'm concerned about breaking more. This one, you know, I can see some really large bits there, so I'm going to do the same thing. I think this will just help overall. You'll see it, you know, you'll see it just change. There we go. So I think turning on that dither is a really good thing to do. Those look okay. This one looks okay as well. The masts didn't really seem to break up much. It might just be the constraints on those that are kind of holding that stuff together, but let's take a look. We've got the 3 different masts here. Let's check out the exploded view on that. I mean, they seem like they should break up, but I guess the constraints that we've got going. So here's our soft constraints, and we've got a lot of those, you know, kind of going on there, and I think that's probably just, yeah, just kind of holding it all together. Now I did want to look at the constraints connecting the mast to the boat, and I think I can see the issue here. Well, there we go. There's a bit missing, or there's a gap, and that would be why. But there's also no points on the boards here underneath, and this really does work by creating connections between the points on the geometry. So what are we going to do? Let's find out what bit that is, and let's actually go all the way back up to the top of the ship and see if we are actually missing something. We are. We're missing this. So where's that going? All wood. Must be splitting it off at some point. So there's the mast going down there, and then There it is there. I think it must be being lost somewhere. Oh. There it is there. So there's that section there. It's all the cannon bits. So perhaps, what am I going to do? I'm gonna just grab this bit manually, which you know, is risky doing that because if I change something above, it'll, you know, might break that selection. But I'm just going to grab that bit, polyfill it, and then maybe I'll give it a name. Oops. Assemble mast block. Merge it in, and then check out my connect adjacent pieces again and see what I've got going on here. You can see what have I got happening. There's still no constraints in that area because there are no surface points on this geometry and there are no surface points on these planks. So here's my polyfilled object here. I'm going to subdivide this to give it surface points. And you can see when you subdivide it turns it round. But if I turn on override crease weight and set that to just something high, 10, you can see it preserves it, but it's just going to add subdivisions. So I'm going to add two depth, which will subdivide it twice. And then let's see if we get connections there. The whole thing moves down because of my transform. See this? Let me template it. Oh, it's very hard to see. But see now, there's a connection between the mast here and a point on that box. That's what I was going for. Now the box is not constrained to the planks, so we could go and find that section of plank. And yeah, I apologize if it's difficult to see. It's kind of gotta really strain to see these things sometimes. Let's see. Yes, you could absolutely, if you wanted to, you know, if you wanted to make it more procedural, certainly you could do that. I'm avoiding, you know, anything too time consuming, just, you know, just because time is a factor. But yeah, absolutely. Where is this section? I can't find it. Maybe it's here. Here. So I'm not even breaking these parts up. That's probably why. So we've got this measure and split. What's on the other side of this? What am I discarding? Just really tiny bits. That's okay. So let's go and fracture this stuff up. We can copy a workflow. Whoa. Control B. Copy a workflow and let's see what happens. It may be a bit full on. I might just check what this transform's doing. It's pretty slow. Points from volume. Let's go 0.2. Come on, you can do it. Fine, fracture. Okay, there we go. And you can see when I do that, it's going to introduce points. Because, I mean, these maybe haven't been fractured up enough, but it has introduced some points along those long lengths. And I'm going to just give this a name. I don't know what this is. What do we call this? Deck. And plug that into our big merge. What's this symbol calling things? Interior bits. That's a technical name. And hopefully, what we will see is then connections between the box and I think I can see that I'll get one there. Oh, look. What have I done? Have I accidentally merged two bits of the same thing together? I think I have. See how I can see when I merge this, I'm getting duplicates here? So perhaps I actually did have that stuff already. Oh, what a fool. Let's see, can get very messy, this stuff, so you have to be careful. But, you know, as soon as I see stuff like that happening, I'm like, oh, uh-oh. Duplicate geometry. Ah, so, there it is there. So I must have already... Oh, there, I see. That's what I've done. I've got that coming off into two, so I need to get rid of that one. There we go. Okay, so now, I should be able to see that. You can see there's a connection. And that will be enough to drag that mast down with it. We just need to make sure that everything's connected together. As you can see, we've got a lot of fractured pieces now. It's probably going to be pretty heavy sim. Middle click, check the names. Let's see, we've got 14,654 names. So, yep, it's a lot of pieces, but hopefully it won't be too bad simulation. I should save. I always forget to save. And you'll see, you know, it is going to be slow. Doesn't even really look like much is moving. I can see some bits here bobbing around. Look at these bits of the ladder or something. They're just random floaty bits. Well, I wonder why it's not moving around now. Let's turn off this static object so it goes a little bit faster. And we've got our pop force, we've got our pop lookout. Nothing else weird going on, I guess. You know, we've got these soft constraints which I potentially made, you know, amped up. And we don't need that anymore. I created that last week for that thing I was trying to do. We've got a glue, which still looks okay. I wonder if we have some problems with our name attributes, but it all seems okay. Oh, whoops. There's a problem with my Houdini, I'll be right back. I don't know. I'll run it a bit longer and see. Maybe it just is going to take some time for that force. Let's see what happens. It doesn't seem to be moving. Well, let's let it go and see. What have I done? What have I done? This is Houdini life, hey? You guys are used to it, me stuffing something up. But this is kind of life in Houdini. Is, you know, you do something, you generate some sort of problem that you have to solve. So what I'm doing here, this is kind of, you know, my process of elimination for what is going on. It's likely, because, you know, I haven't really messed with anything in here, it's likely that I stuffed something up in what I was just doing. But just as a process of elimination, I'm just going to turn off my complex force, turn off my pop lookout, and just put a regular gravity and see if then it starts to fall. And if it doesn't, then I know that the problem is somewhere else. And as you can see, it is falling. So I think the piece naming, I mean, yeah, it's just entirely likely that I, you know, messed something up, but whoa, I think the piece naming is okay, but I should check it because that is absolutely correct. I mean, that it could very well be that. But you can see that force is working now. So interesting. The pop lookout could be part of the issue. Let's leave the pop lookout off and do this one, custom force. It's not running on a group, it's just doing its thing. But I mean, certainly naming is a big thing to check with RBDs, and absolutely you should double check that everything has unique names, and just make sure that everything's kind of spot on. Oh, we can see some interesting stuff going on here. My my boat is just getting squashed by those two forces. Yes, absolutely. It is a real-time puzzle. And if you're anything like me with solving puzzles, I sometimes can't let it go until I figure it out. So it can be long days of solving problems. But that's interesting. It's something that we didn't see before, and maybe that's just because of the level of fracture that I had going on. But we're getting now this, I'm surprised that I didn't see it before, but where the top of the boat is coming down because it's above zero, and the bottom of the boat is below zero, and that's getting pushed upwards. So we're getting this this squashing. It's interesting that we didn't see that at all before. It's kind of odd. Maybe let's check. Oh, you know what? I turned off all the constraints. That's why. So the constraints are stopping that, obviously. That's what they're there for. They're designed to stop stuff falling apart. Let's turn those back on. Yeah, okay. So there's something in this which is preventing the force preventing it from dropping. So we'll turn them off one by one. Let's turn off the bullet soft constraint first. Hey Abiu, I have a whopping 128 gig of RAM. Thank you, CG Spectrum. Yeah, it's amazing. But you don't need it. You don't need 128 gig. It is good, don't get me wrong, and it means that I can push my simulations and the amount of stuff that I have much higher than I could otherwise. But you can do this stuff on 32 gig. It gets slow, you might hit some limitations, and you need to think about where you need to optimize things. 64 is great as well. But yeah, I mean, for the longest time I only had 32 gig, and it was fine. I would hit limitations, but you just learn to work around them. And yeah, it's expensive, 128 gig of RAM. I wouldn't have been able to afford it by myself. But yeah, I think even on 16 gig of RAM, if that's all you've got and that's your laptop, you can still do stuff. I have a Microsoft Surface that I use for Houdini. I think it's got 16 gig. It's a Surface Pro. But if I'm out or on the train or something and I got one of those Houdini problems that I can't let go of, I'll crack it open, and it's kind of slow, and you wouldn't do full-on really high-res stuff on it, but yeah, it's fine. You work within your means. I can do stuff on a laptop and have it be pretty good quality, and it just forces you to really optimize stuff as much as possible. So let's see, is it dropping? It is dropping now. So the glue constraint is causing something to stop working. So let's see what is going on here. Absolutely, Bullet is CPU heavy entirely. There's no GPU at all with Bullet. How simulation works on a distributed simulation? You mean when you distribute it across multiple computers? Some simulations do work well doing distributed, but or distributed against multiple CPUs, I guess. Some simulations, just because the way that simulations work is that they rely on having the data, the frame before, so it can be difficult to do distributed sims. It's usually why, even on a render farm, you only do a simulation on a single machine, because it solves one frame and then it advances to the next frame and it has the data of the frame before. Often when we do distributed things, it's usually a procedural setup where it doesn't matter at what time a computer picks up a frame to write out. You know, you might submit to the farm a job, a render farm, that is a job that can be distributed across lots of machines. You might give each machine a chunk of 10 frames to do, so one machine gets 0 to 10, the next machine gets 11 to 20 or whatever. And because it's a procedural setup and it's not based on time, it doesn't matter where it picks it up. It'll just pick it up and run the setup. But yeah, simulations are more difficult because of that that factor of having to have the frame before's information. I believe there are ways to do it with distributed, but you may need to have to share that information across multiple machines, which just, I guess, becomes slightly more problematic. I don't know, yeah, it's been a while since I've looked at distributed simulations. I know there are ways to do it, but I think it can be quite problematic, so it's usually that we just send the whole thing to a single machine and it will rip through it, but it can be really slow as well. So I did put this transform in, maybe that's messing some stuff up, but let's just double check all the names. So we've got Mast here, and I'm just going to double check my spreadsheet, which is a little bit covered for you guys, but basically I'm just looking at the names. So Mast, and we're doing some merging stuff here, so just let's check all these assembles and make sure that, so we've got hull here in this one, long beams, mast block, that was after I added that one in as well. Check that geometry type, that's okay. What do we got here? We're merging some stuff here and then doing an assemble on everything, interior bits. Always good to check, make sure you don't have like duplicate names as well, like a point name and a primitive name, that could cause issues. Then we got this one, which is being called deck. Double check. Okay. This merge is not throwing any warnings either, which is good. Then we're transforming down. Doing that. So what's this one? We've got our out glue here. We've got this here. I don't think I'm using that. Let's just whoops. Let's just double check where that's coming from. So that's out glue. So yeah, this dude here is not being used, so I'm gonna ditch that. Got our assemble here, which is not recreating names, so that's good. This one is all soft, and this one, let's check this out. And we don't have any active attributes or anything that's gonna deactivate things. We are doing, I mean, we do have a setup for that down here that I sort of was looking at with creating a group, but that's not being used. It all seems okay. Our glue is set to a very strong value. We've got the swap solver on here as well, which is doing some deleting based on a bounds. Removing those soft constraints in that area only. and then we're also breaking them based on distance and angle. That shouldn't really have any, effect. It's weird. It's like it's been constrained to the world. Yeah. Nothing does tax your machine more than Houdini. It is it's incredibly heavy on on machines. It just chews up all the resources. Definitely having more RAM is good, especially if you want to use your computer while you're also using Houdini. Like if you're rendering and you want to do something, or you're simulating and you want to look at the internet or something. Because if not, you just sort of everything grinds to a halt and locks down. Rendering, I still use Mantra a lot for rendering, and it's slow, but I really like the result, and I find it easy to set up very custom stuff with Mantra, whereas Redshift I find very tricky sometimes to set up certain things. It's just not working. What is going on with this glue? But I recently experimented with rendering stuff on a render farm, which I had really good experience with, and it's sort of it was slightly costly. It did cost money, but I was doing it for a job, and it made sense for me to use that. So Mike says, yeah, nice in the winter for heating my room. Yeah, absolutely, Mike. It's approaching summer here, and I'm a little concerned about this this box that I'm working in getting incredibly hot. I got to sort out some aircon, or get the computer out of this room. So yeah, it does get quite warm. So I've been experimenting with a render farm called Grid Markets, which is it's quite good. It integrates into Houdini quite well. You get a plugin, and it basically, I'll show you. Go to the out context, and you've got this Grid Markets render submit. You just plug your Mantra node into that, and then there's a whole workflow. You need to watch their videos on how to set it up, and it took me a few goes with some things to get it working. And with external files, you basically recreate a whole folder structure on their network. It's good. I mean, I really liked it. And to give you, a good kind of example, I had to get something done for a client, and they needed it in the morning, and I set it off to render in the afternoon, thinking, oh, that's plenty of time, and it was telling me it was going to take 16 hours to render. It was quite long. I think it was 300 and something frames. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to be worried about this all night. I wanted to save money. I didn't want to spend on the render farm. But I was like, oh, I have to, otherwise I'm going to be stressing about this, and I'll have to get up early to comp it and do all that stuff. So 16 hours on my machine. I sent it to the render farm. I had to upload some stuff as well, which I was avoiding because the upload's kind of slow. But I uploaded the cache and set it to render, and it was done in 21 minutes. And it cost me like $30 US, which, on a commercial job, it's like whatever. But yeah, 16 hours, 21 minutes. I got it back, immediately, and comped the shot, sent it off, and went to bed. It was kind of like, it was either that or, staying up all night and then getting up early. So it was worth it, and it just, it worked. The whole thing, you got to make sure you set up, get all the external files, all your HDRIs, textures, all that kind of stuff. But once you get all that working, it's great. You got a whole render farm at your disposal. You got to pay for it, but yeah, it's if you're trying to get like some high quality thing done, or some like really long thing done, and you just want to get it done, then it's a good option. It's a really good option for somebody working at home without the resources of a big studio. I just don't know what has happened here. It's this glue, this pesky glue. It's like it's been glued to the world. I might have to... Let's see, I'll just run it again, make sure that it's working without the glue. The problem with not having glue is that, as you can see, it takes really long now. Because glue kind of deactivates things, or it glues them together, so it makes them perform like they are one object, rather than 10,000 objects. You know, if you got all them glued together, it makes them perform like they're all kind of glued together. But when you don't, or if all the glue breaks, then they start performing like, you know, 10,000 objects all separate. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It could be the stiffness, but it's what's weird about it is that, or the strength. Yeah, what's weird about it is that it should still be falling, no matter what. You know, even if they are all glued together and the strength is really strong, they should all be falling. It makes me think that there's just some wrong thing in here. You know, maybe it's this little piece that I added for some reason. It doesn't like that, or you know, maybe there's some weird bit of geometry in here which is really freaky. One thing to watch out for when you have fractured geometry is you know, errors in the P value. Sometimes you can get errors. It says NaN, which stands for not a number. If you see those, and you'll get crashes and you'll get all sorts of weird stuff. Usually you can filter them just by clicking like that. We may also, just through tweaking the fracture, we may have generated a piece which is causing this to, you know, causing it to not work. We may have accidentally got a weird little piece in here. Bullet doesn't tend to work too well when you have really tiny pieces, and they can cause some funny things to go on. So, you know, perhaps that happened. It does seem like, you know, well, what if I disconnect this stuff? Because this, have a look at this rudder down here. That's looking a bit, it's looking a bit dodgy. That could be the offending piece. I did kind of want those bits of deck in there because of the collision to that mast, but you know, maybe I'd get rid of that rudder. It's coming from the fracture, I think. It might be, it's open, look. I think it's open, or it's maybe, yeah, look at that. It's got kind of weird open faces. It's probably down to the way I split it and the measure. What I might do is, oh, and look at all these. All right, gonna have to do this properly. So let's do this. Actually, yeah. What I'll do is, that's not what I wanted to do. Sometimes it puts the blast in just the weirdest spots. I must have had that node selected or something. What I will do first is just try solving without that stuff plugged in and see if that fixes the issue. I'm missing that stuff now. I really want that. I want that stuff in there. But let's just see if it fixes it. Diagnostics. It is falling. But it's interesting that this part of the boat isn't really doing much. But it is kind of all falling apart now. Turn that soft constraint back on. Alright. So we got some movement happening. Yeah, it is weird that this section back here is kind of just not doing a whole lot. You know, it's sort of, I guess it's moving, but it's not sinking there. So it's kind of strange. Alright, so let's go back and investigate this. I've blasted the rudder away, but as you can see, there were like some. They have been capped, but yeah, look, there's some dodgy stuff going on here. So what I'm going to do is, after this, I'm going to put a polyfill down. Some intersections as well, which aren't ideal. That could be causing some problems. Some patches were not created. I think that'll be okay. You can see most of the things that we wanted filled have been filled. Yeah, that little thing there kind of worries me, but it might be okay. So tedious, this stuff, when you have like just a lot of pieces. It just does take a long time to kind of go through and make sure that everything's kind of okay, everything's been filled. And yeah, this is what you have to do with models that you get. You just have to kind of process them in this way so they work properly for Bullet. I mean, this one has been mostly pretty good, but there are always going to be potentially some areas. You can see here, there's some stuff going on here when we fracture that isn't good. So we need to kind of investigate what's going on there. The polyfill looks like it might be actually, I see. So these bits are not going to fill too well. So I might have to split these guys out before I do that. So I'm just going to double click them. All these ones. Maybe this guy too. Oh, that's interesting. And that looks alright. Maybe I'll just remove them for now. Okay. And here's my rudder deletion, which I'll need to update because it's manual. You know, you gotta make sure that as soon as you change something, it's gonna change that selection, so you gotta update it. Let's see what happens. Deck. Okay. Well, that's rather annoying. I mean, what we had originally seemed to be working, so maybe I'll just ditch the... because we were just running it off here before, and that was working, which is odd. So maybe I'll just do that again. Go back to what was working. I think I plugged it in there. Disconnect that one. You know, ideally, I will have to sort that out, but I don't want to spend the whole stream doing it. Let's see. Gah, curses. So weird. What is going on? Pop force. Let's just try this constant one again. No dice. You know what? One thing I might try is just setting all these pieces to be active. Just to... I don't think that should, you know, be anything, but just in case something's going on there. Hopefully it's not this transform as well. I don't know. It shouldn't be. I can see a couple of little bits that aren't glued moving around, so yeah, things are obviously happening. I mean, we can change the glue method as well and just see, you know, kind of, maybe not that one. See what, you know, see what happens if we just kind of change that, or even go that one. So this one, just the same as the way that we created the soft constraint, it will create connections between the surface points, whereas this one creates connections between the centroid of the piece, of each differently named piece. You can create a glue like this, which is going to connect nearby points together. So we could try that. The problem is that it doesn't always get everything, and it does create a lot more glue constraints. You can see 236,000 polygons as opposed to that method, which is 71,000. And it's just slower. The more primitives you have in a constraint network, the slower it's going to be. But it's worth kind of trying and seeing, you know, seeing what happens when we change. Still Bubkus. Killing me, bullet. Yeah, like you can see just how much slower it is with the glue off, so that's why I really want to solve the problem. It's just like painful so. Alright. Turn you back on. Go to our simple force. Maybe turn off the pop drag. We haven't done that yet. Nothing. What is going on? Well, I didn't take the strength down. I mean, that is just going to end up breaking the glue, but that also doesn't help. I'm going to turn on this gravity. I mean, I never use these because you can't customize it really, but I'm just going to see if that does anything different. No dice. Alright. Well, maybe not the last thing, but I'm going to try something else here where I'm going to attribute delete the name here. And I might just delete everything that I don't need. No, maybe not. Should just be the name. So, yeah, I've gotten rid of the name attribute. Now I'm just going to put a new assemble down. And I'm making sure that it's before the constraints. And I'm just going to call it boat. Brand new name. Boat for everything. These should all still, you know, kind of work. This didn't make a difference, so I'm just going to go back to surface points. See this little constraint here? Looks like our rudder is still in there. Oh yeah, that's okay. That's all right. Make sure my gravity's turned on. What? Oh. Alright, so, you know, let's start disconnecting things from this. This is that Mast block that I added in. You would think, surely that is not the problem. Ah. We've got this hole here. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, it's just all those little pieces. I mean, that should be okay. Seriously. So annoying. Got this assemble, interior bits. Alright, I'm just going to start running through this and see. So I disconnected the mast block. That should be kind of what we had to begin with. I'll do this. I'll turn that stuff off. I'll turn off the transform. Why not? Yeah, that could be part of the issue. Shouldn't be. Not falling. Man. Why? So if I turn the glue off. It falls. Of course it falls. Okay. Let's go and try and debug this a little more. So I don't think I did much to the masts, but let's just go through one by one. It's not fun, but it's what we're gonna have to do. Turn all this stuff off. We don't really need that. Okay, so we've got masts. Well, I don't really... I mean, the issue is that the boat has stopped falling. So there we go, those are falling. There is something in here that has stopped. And it's only to do with the glue. So what I'm trying to determine is where the issue is. And I've turned off any number of things to try and figure it out, but now I'm just going through, and maybe I should have done this from the start, but yeah, hindsight. Now I'm just going through every piece, and as you can see, those two are working, so I'm just going to go through every piece and try and determine where the issue is. It stands to reason that it's this part over here, because that, although the hull we haven't done yet. Disassemble, unpacking. I don't have this centroid attribute anymore, I don't think. I'm just going to get rid of that. Yeah, so let's try that. So there we go. So at that point is when it stops working. So that's this stuff. Let's just go this stuff straight into the sim. Ah, and look, these parts are falling, this part is not. So there's something going on with that top section. And then we've got lots of individual pieces here, so I'm just going to check each one by one. So that falls by itself. And, you know, we are doing an assemble on everything here, so, you know, the other thing that we could try is just, like, doing a separate assemble on each one. You know, planks. Bang. What's this one? No, I'm just going to go planks B. Yeah, I don't know what these are meant to be, but... And then, what do we got here? We've got end. Oh, let's just call it plank C. And then we've got this other bit. I'll just disconnect that one for now. So now we've got these three named sections. Let's test that. Yeah, I think I'm slowly getting close to it, but it's, man, it's super annoying. Oh, look. So, yeah, see? So something in one of these. So which one is it? I think it's not that. It might be this one. Oh, I was naming over them again. Let's just make sure. Yeah, so it's like this stuff up here. It looks like something in here is just not happy. Let's take this one. So that part's falling now, okay. What have I got? So I've got this. Alright, so I did change the fracture on this one, and maybe in here there is something wrong. So what are we gonna do? Let's just take a look, make sure there's no open faces. We do have some boards that are kind of intersecting each other here. Although, yeah, so there's some intersections going on there. Don't know, could be that. Maybe we won't do this squashing as much. I'll just adjust that so it's not squashing it as heavily. Because that can, you know, can cause bits of geometry to overlap sometimes. I don't know, you know, who knows. Let's see. So frustrating when you hit a problem like this, because especially on a live stream where you only have 2 hours, it's like choose up a significant amount of your time. I would have hoped to have been slightly more ahead, but we can work on it next week too. I really want to eventually get this onto a flip ocean so we can get some cool splashes and things going on. I think that will look really cool. Alright, so we're just testing this piece now. We want to see the whole thing fall. We don't want to see any bits not fall. Something weird in the fracture. There might have been like a weird floating point or something. I mean, one of the things I was going to test was just to put a add node down. There's a few ways to do this. If you go to polygons and do removed unused points, that can potentially get rid of weird floating points that might be in there. But yeah, okay. So let's go through now and just check these off. Let's get this guy back in. So yeah, I think we can take this now from That's right. That's right. You do have to be a good detective here, and that is a large part of working in Houdini. As Urko rightly points out, you know, it is you're constantly creating problems, or, you know, coming across problems, and you have to go through the motions of, you know, step by step trying to figure this stuff out. And sometimes you can be lucky and hit it, you know, on the first thing that you look at, or you can be unlucky and it's the last thing that you check. So yeah, it is, you know, it's a really good skill to learn, the debugging thing, and using everything that you have, the spreadsheet, and checking and deleting attributes, recreating them, all that kind of stuff is vitally important. Alright, so I'm just going to plug everything back in and hope that it works. Where's my hole here? Plug that back into. Now this one I didn't fracture, but I think it's kind of small enough. And probably turn that transform back on. Fingers crossed. It looks like I didn't plug in my little mask bit as well, but let's grab that. Come on, you can do it. Oh, I think it's moving. Yes! Great success. Alright. Well, thanks for hanging in there with me. Sorry about that. Houdini fooled me again. Alright, so we can turn on our soft constraints. Let's just turn everything back on and make sure that it's still working. I can see it moving. That's right, she falls. Those are the most annoying problems as well, because it's like, it's such a kind of difficult thing to find. Fractures, you know, and bad geometry, they can always create, you know, create issues. So checking your fractures is probably a good place to start. But in that case, the fracture looked okay. It's just it was yielding some weird results, and probably by me squashing the geometry and then scaling it again, that was just making it worse. But yeah, anyway, we got there. We got there. And the whole point of redoing that stuff was to get this this mast to follow along when the fracture happens. So let's turn this guy back on. Now it's so frustrating. All right, let's go. Hide these as well, because they do slow it down. Having any kind of guide or display on there will slow your simulation kind of display down, which in turn slows the whole thing down, and it does make a significant kind of difference. And even like the displaying the bullet blue kind of collision shape, that stuff's really slow as well. So try to just keep it, the display as light as possible, and everything will go a little bit faster. This is a pretty slow sim, for RBDs. RBDs are usually quite quick, but we've got a lot going on. The more constraints you have, the more pieces you have, it's just going to be a much slower kind of simulation. What do you guys think of the music? I've been using this new platform called Pretzel, and yeah, I just randomly picked a playlist because I haven't had time to look through it all, but let me know if you find it annoying or too loud or something. Well, it's syncing. That's a good start. Hopefully it will pop back up as well. I haven't even gotten to the sails. I wonder if I've got half an hour left. I wonder if I should look at adding the sails in and see if we can get some vellum stuff going. What I might do, because I'm sure, well, I'm just going to take a leap of faith and hope that this is working. And I'm going to dop import this from the dot network. So I'm just going to drag the dot net up, fetch geometry from dot network. I'm not going to bring out the collider. Yeah, cool. Thanks, okay. I'm not going to bring out the collider. I'm only going to bring out the boat. So the object mask basically works by name. You also have numbers which you can use, but that's kind of fraught with, it can change if you introduce new objects or change the order. That can change the number that you are merging out. You can see 0, 1, yeah. So, but those can flip around. So it's better to use the names, and the name of the boat is RBD packed object 1 or something. So I'm just going to do star packed star, and that's going to wildcard that object. I could even do star RBD, if I did static I would get that. Hey, cool, thanks Ivan. Stepping it up a notch, slowly getting there. The light's really bad today, I don't know what I did, but I was messing around with my camera. I got to improve that. Slowly getting there. So, what am I doing? I'm going to write this out. I'm going to write this to disk. Incidentally, let me show you something. I think I showed you this last week, but I really don't like this file cache 2 that came out with 19. It sort of messes with my brain of how I like to cache stuff out. So I turned on this. I think I did mention this last week, but I'll tell you again. Asset definition toolbar. I set to show always or show when needed, and it allows me to flick between the versions of the asset. So this is file cache 2.0. If I change it to file cache, then I get my original simple file cache light back, and I can just very quickly and easily do that and save to disk. Sometimes I'll do this as well, $OS/$OS. Look, I realize that they tried to make it a little simpler and a little more foolproof, but I find it errors when I hit save, so I don't know. Until they kind of fix that stuff, then I'm just going to keep using this one. I'm going to call this boat sim. and then I'll show you guys a cool trick with this stuff. I want to watch this going at the same time that I'm caching it out, but if I just hit save to disk, it just gives me a pop-up, and that's all I get. I'm going to set this to write files, and turn off load from disk. Stick my view flag on the file cache, and I'm going to flipbook it. So yeah, let's hit flipbook. Because this is set to write files, and the flipbook is advancing, you know, every frame, I could also have initialize simulation ops, and that will restart the sim, but we've already done almost 50 frames, so may as well keep that. I'm going to hit start, and it's going to go through and evaluate the simulation, and because this is set to write files, it's going to write them to disk. So now we're flipbooking and writing the sim to disk at the same time. And you know, you get the best of both worlds, especially when it's a really long, heavy simulation that takes a while to calculate. You know, write it to disk, then I've got to wait another few minutes for it to flipbook. I may as well do them at the same time. Also, I can keep an eye on my simulation so I can see what it's doing while I'm writing it to disk. And if I don't like what I'm seeing, I can cancel it, and I don't have to wait for it to do 240 frames of a simulation before I see it. And yeah, I really like doing it this way, especially when it's a slow thing. If it's quick, it doesn't matter, you can do whatever, but when you've got a slow simulation, then yeah, it helps. So yeah, the asset definition stuff, Ivan, it's good. You know, if you're used to working the old way and something new comes out and stomps over your workflow and makes it slow for you, then you can always roll back. I will eventually kind of get my brain to work the new way, and I keep forgetting to report the error that pops up when it's some Python error when I hit save and I have one of these new file caches. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but as soon as I put one in and start saving, it starts throwing Python errors. Yeah, I just find the layout of the new one it doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, I won't bitch about it. The behavior of the boat is working though. This is good. You know, we're getting that bobbing. It's maybe a little much, but that's okay. And we won't see the tentacle, but we should see the destruction that it causes. It's probably not going to be best, you know, my final choice for the destruction, but it'll be something, and we can use it to do the vellum stuff. Now here's another thing that I do while I'm waiting for a simulation, and I could have done save in background, which would mean that it would offload it and I could keep working in my Houdini, but you know, I wanted to do this flipbooking. What I'm going to do is open up this this scene again in another Houdini. So I've just got another Houdini here. I'll drag it over when it's ready to go. So here we go. Here's our other Houdini. And what I'm going to do is start working in this one, and when I get my other one back, when it comes back, I'm going to copy this stuff into that file. It's just a workflow thing, you know, which allows me to keep going and working on this stuff while I'm waiting for a simulation. So, you know, this is still going on in the background, and I'll just, you know, I'll get it back when it's done. So let's dive in and have a look at the sails. See what we can do. I can also, you know, bring that file cache in here, or if I had saved it with that file cache in there, which I probably should have done before I hit sim. But I can see how that's going as well if I, you know, stick a file in there and load that sim in. I can see what it's doing and use it for my vellum if I want to, you know, if I want to start setting those things up too. So we've got the sails, we've got all this other cool stuff as well, like ropes, which you know, I might have a look at some point. The sails though, they are already quite dense, and these ones are kind of tricky because they've already been sort of bunched up. So I don't know what the best approach is for those. Got a little flag here, got this one. let's have a look. So we'll go to frame 1. We've got frame 1 of the boat. The boat as well I have moved down. So we have to remember that. I have applied a transform to this all the way down here, so I'm just going to grab that. And first create the offset for the sails. It looks like I'm missing some stuff on the boat here as well for these sails. I guess these are coming off the ropes. But I might also be missing some bits of wood. Let's check that out. Yeah, look, I'm missing some of these sections, which I don't know where they ended up. I guess over here. Ah, look, here they are. Yep. All is not lost. I don't have to necessarily simulate with them. I can bring them over here, merge, and well, I guess that didn't need to be a merge, just a null. What I could do is, let's see, what I'm going to do, I'll put an assemble down and pack these bits. And then I'm going to use a point deform. There's a few ways I could do this, but because I'm just reading this out as geo, I'm just going to do this as a point deform. These should be packed at this point. There we go there, they're packed, 24,000 packed fragments. Rest point lattice would be the first frame of this simulation, which should match the position of these guys. So, and then deform point lattice will be the simulation. Because these are packed, they're not going to deform, they're just going to move with the geometry based on the proximity. So what we should see now is, and so you can, there's a transform pieces method for this as well, but it's easier if you're just spitting out points from the simulation rather than geometry like I have. So I think the points from volume method, the point deform method, is probably going to work well here, and it's just sort of proximity based, so it's kind of foolproof. So yeah, let's see what's going on there. These guys are kind of in a weird spot. The position of those looks... Oh, yeah, transform. Got to transform them as well. There we go. That's better. So, as you can see, they're not simulated with the boat, but they are now moving with the boat. There's our frame there. Oh, don't tell me I didn't turn the tentacle back on. I thought I did, but or maybe it's slightly later. Anyway, there we go. We've got those pieces. Now let's see if we're missing anything else. I feel like we're missing maybe it's just ropes on that one. Let's check it out. Ah, there's that one there. Maybe I'm deleting that. There we go. Looks like I just got rid of those ones completely. Oh, here they are over here though. Ah, I deleted. Yep, I deleted that one, which is important. So I can do the same thing. I'll just delete non-selected on that and merge it over here. Already got the merge. Hey, look at that. There we go. So this is kind of what I would do with all the tiny things as well, like the cannons, all that stuff that I don't necessarily need to simulate. And I'll just kind of, I'll merge all that stuff in with the boat, like this. Oh, look, something's happening. My computer's starting to make some noises as well, which means maybe something more intense is happening. Something's going on in here. Alright, so now we've got that going on. Let's have a look at our sails. So the first thing that we could do is actually do the same thing with our sails. We could merge them So I'm going to create a group for these. They may already be in a group that comes with the... Well, there we go, you can see the sales groups there. Actually, what might be easier is you can see all these groups are empty. If we do group delete unused groups, it will just show us the groups that are still here. So maybe this one, I don't know, they're all really long groups, so I'm just going to create my own group and just call it sales. And then merge it in. Transform gets applied to everything, to our point deform with everything else. And then we've got everything moving together. That's good. Then we can split the sales out. So let's just put the split on this side. I'm going to split, I guess from group primitives, sales. What did I do wrong? Sales, image. I've assembled them at this point, so I'm going to unpack, and that should give me access to those. There we go. So there's my sales on one side. And the other bits of geometry. So these probably will act as my my kind of constraining points, those and the masts. So for the masts, what I could do, I mean, there's not many groups here, but I do have a name attribute. I mean, I could unpack and that might give me access to those groups as well. But I also do have a name attribute, which I can utilize. So there is a mast group there, but we have named these things kind of, you know, correctly, I suppose. We've got mast. So that's why I do create, another reason why I do create unique names, so that I can do stuff like this. So s at name equals mast. Oops. Don't know if I need the, actually, in this context, I don't think I need the inverted commas. It's a primitive attribute, so you choose primitives. I don't even need the S. Mast star. There we go. It needs the star because it has all these numbers after it. You know, it has mast 1 through 1000 or whatever. So you need the star at the end to wildcard everything that's called mast. Looks like we're not getting a couple of little bits on the end there. I don't know what. You know, you can do stuff like this where you just select those. It seems to be getting selected. Interesting. Why not? Awesome. Let's try selecting the points. Okay. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know why I can't select them. What I was trying to do is select those. For some reason I can't. Let's try it maybe back here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I don't know. Weird. Select them and then go to the geometry spreadsheet and do only show selected. And then I can see that that part is part of the deck for some reason. So, yeah. Anyway, that doesn't matter. We're going to isolate the masts. And now we've got these 2 bits of the wood for our... These will be our kind of constraint points for the vellum. So here's our cloth. I'm just going to do a vellum configure cloth here. And plug that in. We'll go through and create the constraints. And these are pretty dense meshes, so there are going to be a lot of constraints. So we may want to remesh these to make them a little less crazy. And I'm actually going to freeze these at this point, because you don't want to remesh every single frame. That will create changing topology, which is bad. So remesh, I'm going to just up the target size for starters, so it's not, it doesn't go too crazy. Just you know, that may be fine or it may be too big, but just take it up so it doesn't crash your machine accidentally. That's pretty, you know, that's pretty big, so I might take it down a little bit. That looks pretty good. Now we'll get much less constraints. We've got constraint geometry here if we had other constraints, but we have collision geometry as well. So I'm going to plug these in, make sure they're all unpacked at this point. I might also put a trail on those so that they have a velocity. Ooh. This is erroring because this trail calculates velocity by looking backwards by default, backwards difference. File cache doesn't have anything stored before frame 1, so it errors when there's a missing frame. Set it to no geometry, and that will cause the velocity on that first frame to be 0 essentially, because looking back it's not finding anything. It's not erroring now, but it's still not finding anything, so the first frame the velocity will be 0. It's not moving anyway, so it should be 0. But then as it starts to move, you know, in the subsequent frames it will register velocity. Now, on here, I'm going to put a vellum attached to geometry. I'm just going to hook up all those. And when you do that, you can see that I can now see the collision geometry in here, and I can see constraints from the cloth to the geometry. And it looks like it's constraining all the cloth. You can see it reaching out from the pole to the cloth. That's not what you want. So you got to come down and find the max distance. Turn it on. That looks like it's working actually. You see all these little connections here? So we could actually even take it down more. Oh, there we go. So it stops working around. Yeah, so 0.05 is probably okay. You can see some of them aren't, that's not constrained there, but that's actually what you want. When they modeled it, that's kind of what they did. You can see like that part is connected and then these parts are flappy and kind of loose. So that will probably give us the same result as what they had originally. This piece is not constrained to anything because it's probably meant to be constrained to the ropes or some other bit that we don't have. Same with these, look like they're part of that, they should be connected to that deck part. So this one as well, looks like it needs to be connected to the ropes. So it looks like we need to maybe I will do this instead. Yeah, probably doesn't need to be too precise, and then I'll just hit Shift G a bunch of times to make sure that I get the connected geometry to those primitives that I just selected, just so that I'm getting whole pieces. That's probably okay. Hit delete on that. Then I'll at least get those top sections. And then I've got to get the ropes. What do we got here? Steel. There's some other bits that potentially, you know, could be used, but I'm just going to go get the ropes and let me template so you can see here these connection points. So I'm just going to select these manually with the ropes. You could, again, do it based on, you know, proximity or something. Look at that. This stuff. Let's get all that in there. I mean, ultimately we might want to simulate these ropes, but for starters, let's just grab the kind of, you know, the parts that we're going to simulate these attached to as kind of more static. There we go. So I think that looks like might be everything. Let's delete that and run that through the same setup. So I'm going to merge that in here. Run it through the point deform. That'll get it deforming in the correct spot. We're then splitting off, and there we've got our posts and ropes now. all being merged together, doing the trail, turning the cloth into cloth, and then the attach, and now you can see we've got that guy in there. So it's pretty good. Like, it does update fairly well when you just add new things in. And let's check out our... Boom! Look at that. Wow, that's crazy. Our constraints need some work. You know, that's shattering into just too many pieces, but it does look cool. So let's, you know, I've made a little bit of a mess here. I need to kind of really neaten this stuff up because it's starting to kind of turn into a little bit of a nightmare. So I'm still in the, you know, the other file. The other sim's still going. I'm just going to put a vellum solver down, a SOP-based one, which is often, unless you're starting to do kind of, you know, more complex things with vellum and you want custom things, this is kind of fine. It looks like I'm missing a constraint there, so I don't have that in the simulation, it seems. So that one flag there is gonna die. So I'm gonna get rid of that. It's just gonna fly away. Alright. So crucially, this is frozen now, but it's gonna, because it's attached to this stuff, these are still updating. These should be moving. Yes. I've got this running off my slow hard drive, this file cache, so that's maybe affecting things. But the simulation is still going in the background too, so my computer's getting pretty slammed right now. I'm not going to save this because, you know, I'm sort of working on parallel files now, but fingers crossed it doesn't crash. Vellum's pretty quick, but it's still going to be affected by the read times and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But hopefully we'll be able to see this working. We don't have any forces at the moment, so, you know, you can see this one at the back, for instance. It's really flying out there, you know. There's wind blowing on it, or the ship is moving, which is causing it to drag behind. So we probably need to replicate what is going on there in the simulation so that it can continue to do that, or it just droops down, and that's okay. Maybe it looks like maybe this flag is detached. I can't tell exactly what's going on there, but you know, so this is now simulating as cloth. It doesn't really look like it's doing anything super fancy at the moment. And yeah, I didn't change any of the cloth settings, so it might just be a little weird. But we can kind of see how this stuff is moving a little bit. This is very low res as well, so you know, we're not going to get a lot of nice wrinkles or anything. But you know, it's a start. And you get some wind in there to get some billowing happening and some interesting motion. And you know, you can't really have this stuff in the simulation with the RBDs, although with 19 there is something that they did with that. I haven't tried that yet, but you know, this is a really fast option. You don't really need this stuff to be kind of, the cloth is not going to necessarily collide with or the RBDs aren't going to bounce off it, which could be cool, but you know, the cloth is something that can just follow along the main action and be attached to things and tear and, you know, do all that stuff. So we could add constraints and tearing to it as well, which, you know, maybe when the boat really starts breaking up, then the cloth can kind of tear apart. So yeah. But as you can see, it's just sort of following along, bouncing along nicely. And it definitely requires having some forces in there, and we may need to do like a custom force for this one, separate to these ones, which we could do if we created some groups for the different sails. We could have, you know, like these sails, for instance, here, might just want a force that's pushing whatever that axis is, down -Z or something. But then this one, we might want to point the other way so that it's kind of nice and, you know, it's maybe unnatural, but nice and billowy out the back a different way. And these ones might want different forces. So you could do that if you created groups for each one. And then you can use pop forces, so you can just apply different pop forces to different groups. Looks like that flag is falling down. This one's hanging on there. How's our other simulation going? Oh, it's finished, finally. See what you get with that pop force is this interesting feeling of things almost being under the water and then rising to the surface and settling on the surface of the water. So it's quite you know, it's quite cool. They actually do feel like they're kind of under the water. But yeah, you know, it's a little bit. I did take that glue strength down I just remembered as I was manipulating this stuff. I did take that glue strength down, which is probably the reason why it's shattering into a billion pieces. But you can see now that that's finished, our vellum solver's motoring a little faster. And if I scrub it, we should be able to see it. See it moving a little more. The file, I think the file read from this hard drive is slow. The simulation is probably quite large, like the on disk read is probably quite large. So, but it's yeah, it's quite slow on this drive. So anyway, I mean, there you go. You know, then now that I've done that and my other file has finished cooking, I can copy this setup. I'll have to make sure that I get everything that I need here. But it should, you know, it should just come across. I have to be careful with some of these things because I added some blasts that, you know, weren't there before. So I want to kind of make sure that I grab every facet of this. Hit Control C and then go back to this one and come over here and hit Control V. And if I grabbed everything that I needed, fingers crossed, it all just hooks up. You can see all that. It just hooks up there to the right spots, which is awesome. So if it finds the same connections, it will hook it up. And as you can see, here I am running off that. I can replace that file there with, you know, I have this one here, so I could move this whole setup, even though it's going to create some nasty cross lines across this. I could replace this file cache now with this one. So sometimes what I'll do to do this, because it can be annoying to sort of hook, I've got multiple things coming out of this. If you put a null down here, whoa, put a null down and try and get all that lined up to the null. Didn't really work too well. You know what? I'll just view that. There we go. Didn't really work so well. I think if you I meant to right click and then do null, and it should insert it there. But now I can disconnect that one and plug it into there. So it's good to use nulls for that sort of stuff. And now it'll just run off this network. So, you know, it's just allowed me to keep going in a different file, then copy it all into this one, and now it will, you know, now it will run on this one. So, yeah. And we could, if we wanted to see how it's going to behave way down here, when the boat starts getting destroyed. Oops. Make sure you turn on load from disk, otherwise it will start evaluating the sim again. So you got to make sure that you turn that on. So, you know, maybe down here, we could actually just pick up our sim, because these are just going to follow along, no matter where you pick it up in the. You don't have to start from the start with this stuff, with the point deform. That's just going to update the position no matter what. But we could pick up our simulation at 175 and just start from there, just to see, you know, a bit faster what is actually happening. Oh, there's a bit of a disconnect here. I must have messed something up with the timing. Yeah, that's interesting. What's going on there? Anyway, you know, you get the idea. Wonder why there's a disconnect. Maybe I've got like a double transform or something in there. Yeah, I don't know. Not sure what's going on there. Yeah. Anyway, you know, you should be able to do that. I'm not sure. I must have messed something up with the transforms there, but yeah, you know, we're getting there. Like, there's definitely. I'm gonna turn that strength back up after this and rerun this, see what it looks like. But you can see this kind of this interesting thing that happens with that force, where you get all this stuff just sort of settling on the surface, and you know, you could do some really cool like bubble simulations coming off these pieces that are below the surface. And then if we get this going with flip as well, there'll be some interesting things. And then it might be something where we need to try and get the motion of the waves in there as well. That could be an interesting thing to look at when we start looking at the flip. It's curious that this mast is kind of just perfectly straight. Must be heavy. But yeah, anyway, there you go. Out of time, guys. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Sorry I got so stuck on that RBD problem. Things not working, but such is life, hey? I'll be working on this next week, so you know, come join me. We'll try and, I don't know if I'll be able to finish it off in one session. It might take a couple, but yeah, we'll keep going on it and just see where we can push it to. And you know, remember this is a Kit Bash asset. This is from the Treasure Island pack, and they have a whole, you know, a sale going on this whole month. So if you want to do stuff like this, it's a good time to get into it and get some of those packs for half price. As you can see, they're incredibly well detailed, so I think they lend themselves to this sort of stuff really well. Cool, thanks guys. Thanks for joining me. Had fun. Yeah, and if you're working on this stuff as well, love to see what you're coming up with. I've seen some cool stuff that people have done from the work, you know, the sort of stuff that I've been doing on my streams, and you guys often push it further than I get a chance to, which is really cool for me to see. So if you do end up doing anything that's, you know, been inspired by these streams or likewise, you know, just send it through to me. I'd love to see what you guys are doing. So yeah, cool. Thanks guys. Have a good week, and I'll see you guys next week.